And when we start looking into the science of sleep, what we find is that sleep is literally impacts almost every single chronic health disease. It impacts every organ of the body. And so at this time when we're taking in, more information than ever, sleep is actually sort of the operating system for how we make sense of all of that sometimes meaningful, but oftentimes meaningless, Snapchats or tweets or what have you. And so at the same time that sleep is under attack, with crummy lights from your office space and the lack of work-life balance, it's actually probably more important than ever to help us navigate this barrage of information that we're being attacked by every day. Einstein and Edison using naps to ideate. And I think a lot of people can relate to, waking up from, say, a power nap and being able to solve that problem because your brain is processing how to, solve problems and optimize your survival while you're sleeping. Deep sleep in particular functions to down-regulate all of the excitatory connections that you make throughout the day, such that the relevant things to your survival rise to the top. So it used to be like, oh, don't go to this part of the jungle, that's where the predators are. Now it's like, oh, what did Mindy say to me at the office, holiday dinner or whatever, something a lot more innocuous. But it's still relevant to your survival oftentimes. And then in REM, you basically replay that pertinent information and then integrate it into your long-term memory and your working memory and your personality, really, long-term memory and personality. So that's one of the main functions of sleep, called the synaptic homeostasis hypothesis, for why sleep is so important to performance and success. So, deep sleep in particular, responsible for human growth hormone, doing the cell recovery thing, and then these areas involving, memory integration, whatnot. Yeah, so the thing about REM and deep sleep is that they're very tied together. So usually it's hard to inhibit one without inhibiting the other. I think about it like deep sleep is how we prune, and then REM is how we integrate. And when you're in REM, your consciousness is very similar to your waking consciousness. It's why we remember our dreams from that perspective of the eye. You have your sense of self when you're in REM. When you're in deep sleep, your brain is oscillating at these delta waves, which are very different to waking life. You basically don't have a sense of self really when you're in deep sleep. Your whole brain oscillates in these delta wave bursts, which is 0.8 to 1 hertz basically. And as you get older, what happens is you lose that percentage of time spent in deep sleep, usually at the expense of light sleep. And so what a lot of researchers now are interested in is, since we lose this as we get older, is there a way, and they think it's related to aging, memory, all these really things that help you keep you young. Is there a way, especially for older people, to enhance your deep sleep brainwaves? Adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep on a regular basis. So that's a nice lower limit. But something to keep in mind is when they say that, they also mean 7 hours of sleep, not 7 hours in bed. And actually, if you spend more than 95%, if you spend 100% of the time in bed asleep, it actually probably means you're sleep depriving yourself. A healthy amount would be 90 to 95%. So basically what that means is adults should be spending at least 7.5 hours in bed. Generally healthy people, you should just sleep until you can't sleep anymore. And you shouldn't feel tired during the day. If someone has a problem falling asleep and staying asleep, they have sleep problems, it's recommended that they do not take a nap. Because what you want to do if you have problems falling asleep and staying asleep is you want to regularize your sleep and consolidate your sleep. And what naps can do for those people is it makes it so it's even more difficult to consolidate their sleep because it kind of throws off their circadian rhythm. You actually want to build homeostatic sleep pressure at specific times if you're having problems falling asleep and staying asleep. And one way to doing that is to not take naps and actually to push your bedtime back a little bit in certain situations. The story I like to tell around the circadian rhythm is the fact that we evolved from bacteria in the ocean that could differentiate sunlight from darkness, and that's what eventually formed the human eye. So like every organism on the planet responds to circadian rhythms. It's a 24-hour cycle for humans, actually a little bit less than that, but close to a 24-hour cycle. So a typical circadian rhythm for a human, usually you'll have a peak alertness about 2 hours after you wake up. You'll have a decline in alertness about 2 hours after lunch. You'll start getting more alert as you approach dinner. After you eat dinner, and some of this corresponds to like the glucose spikes after meals. And then you gradually get more tired after dinner, and you get a peak tiredness at around 3 in the morning, like when you're going to wake up for a flight or something like this. And so knowing where you are in this, and we actually have genes that can tell us if we're a morning person or an evening person, there are these environmental cues that you can exploit to entrench your circadian rhythm, actually, and make your sleep deeper, and shift your rhythm to either be more of a morning person or a night owl. The biggest Zeitgeber is actually sunlight, and that's why these office and hospital environments that are void of sunlight are so problematic. And other things are timing of meals, timing of exercise, even things like engaging in social interactions late at night where you're exciting yourself at a time when your body usually isn't excited can shift your circadian rhythm. And so by entrenching this rhythm, you want a healthy rhythm. Building up your homeostatic sleep need with like exercise throughout the day is something. And this is a recommendation I really like to give, but there's some evidence that having an orgasm actually improves your sleep quality. So those are little hacks to try to get more deep sleep. Athletes visualize what they're good at, and doing it during the nighttime actually helps you perform the next day. And that finding is a very strong finding. Like the act of visualizing doing something actually makes you better at doing it. And the idea here is that you could prime the ability to visualize tasks that you want to be optimal at by priming yourself through various cues at certain times of your sleep.